The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the David Pakman Show. You know, it was clear when the Supreme Court ruled yesterday about the Defense of Marriage Act and Proposition 8 that right-wingers, particularly anti-gay, often religiously based bigots, were going to go completely crazy, coming up with just about every apocalyptic consequence under the sun of the striking down of the Defense of Marriage Act, and that's happened, and it's actually happened to an even greater extent than any of us could have even imagined. I'm going to play a few things for you, okay? First of all, my first exhibit is Glenn Beck interviewing Rand Paul on his radio program. This is audio that we have for you, and Glenn Beck starts to wonder whether gay marriage might lead to polygamy and zoophilia. And I want you to pay close attention to Rand Paul's reaction here. Rand Paul's reaction. Listen to this.
I'm very concerned. I really don't care. You get married, you don't get married. You have homosexual marriage or whatever. First problem with this is if you change one variable, right, man and a woman, to man and woman and woman, you cannot then tell me that you can't logically change the other variable. One man, three women. One woman, four men. You can't do that. And who are you to say that if I'm a devout Muslim and I come over here and I have three wives, who are you to say if I'm an American citizen that I can't have multiple marriages?
Right.
Right. And I think this is the conundrum and gets back to what you were saying in the opening, whether or not churches should decide this. But it is difficult because if we have no laws on this, people take it to one extension further. Does it have to be humans? So there really are.
Yeah, Rand Paul. Does it even have to be humans? And of course, he ended up having to back off of that. But let's analyze that a little bit. You don't really need the Supreme Court striking down the Defense of Marriage Act to reason towards multiple wives. I mean, the Bible covers that pretty well already, Lewis. That's what always seems to be lost in these absurd and amateurish and juvenile slippery slope arguments, which is the multiple wives thing is already in the Bible. It's not about the Supreme Court, right? It's not about the John Roberts court doing one thing or another. But isn't Rand Paul supposed to be a libertarian? Doesn't he recognize that this is more freedom and more freedom is good? Now, let's analyze variables can be changed, right? Yes, variables can be changed. And we can change variables on their merits. So, for example, removing a gender restriction when it comes to the institution of marriage. Why not? Some people are born gay. That shouldn't prevent them from having the same rights to enter into the institution of marriage with one other consenting adult. Then we have the number restriction, right? The number of wives, and that this would lead to you could have more wives or more husbands or multiple marriages. Okay, we could analyze that and we could determine whether that's something that makes sense or not. Changing the laws around it would be complicated to accommodate it, but it's not about this ruling because that's kind of already in the Bible, and oftentimes we hear about what God wants. So, okay, that's another variable.
Changing variables is not something new, and it's not something that's frowned upon. I mean, we changed variables when we allowed black people to vote. We changed variables when we allowed women to vote. And correct me if I'm wrong, I do not believe that animals can vote.
No, they certainly can't. No. And so let's get to that one, right? The variable of do you even need to be a human? That would be removing a species restriction to marriage. That doesn't make any sense, right? Non-humans do not have legal standing nor the ability to consent. So really we're talking about something different. That's not a variable that is logically following the slippery slope. And then removing the age restriction, you could marry a 5-year-old. No, minors cannot make certain legal decisions for themselves. One of those is marriage. And unless you completely upend the idea of the age of consent and minimum age restrictions, that doesn't make sense. That's not a logical slippery slope. So this argument makes no sense. I hope you understand that. And Rand Paul, in the short period of time between the Glenn Beck interview and a Fox News appearance, was told, you might want to walk back on the bestiality thing. Take a listen to what he had to say to Megyn Kelly.
This morning out of the U.S. Supreme Court, because I know you went on Glenn Beck's show this morning, radio show, and you made a comment that you're going to take some flack for, which was he was saying this is going to lead to the legalization of polygamy potentially and other situations, and you came out and said and I quote, "I think this is a conundrum. If we have no laws on this, people take it to one extension further. Does it have to be humans?" Do you want to comment on that, Senator?
Well, I think my point that I was trying to make is that government has been involved in marriage for a while, and it's been at the state level. And I think if we leave it at the state level, there will be room to disagree, but it will probably be within certain parameters. Like I said, I don't think it will be with multiple humans, and I think it will be human and human. And so I didn't mean that to mean anything other than that I think the...
what he really means is he realized how completely absurd what he said was in the little while between the first interview and the second interview, and he's now going to take it back.
I think it's just pretty safe to assume that you can get away with saying anything if you're on Glenn Beck's show like he does. But, yeah, luckily they caught him.
Yeah, and he did walk that back.